Hi, Kim Rayner here from All About Spirits Life After Cancer. And when we get a cancer diagnosis, we are thrown curveballs. It impacts everything from our physical life to our social life, our spiritual life, intimacy, income, how we handle change, our emotions, our social life, family, friends, all of that. And, excuse me, I created Life After Cancer to help people navigate what I call the spices of life and life after treatment. So I hope that you enjoy episode 58 of Life After Cancer. And today's episode is called A Pancreatic Cancer Survivor Asks, Where is God in all of this? And the topic was chosen based on a conversation I had with a pancreatic cancer survivor. And you know, in the years that I have been working with others, I have worked with pancreatic, lung, ovarian cancer survivors, and I have worked with people who have lost their children. I have worked with people who were survivors of floods and fires and tornadoes. And I've worked with people who were in car wrecks and car wrecks that have claimed somebody's life. And they were sometimes the drivers and sometimes the passengers of those car wrecks. I've worked with stroke survivors. It's hunting season where I am. I've worked with stroke survivors, dialysis patients. I've worked with rape and incest survivors, assault survivors, and I've worked with people who have been left behind after the process is all over and done. And what I know based on that experience is it is not just pancreatic cancer survivors who ask that question. Anybody who has had any kind of experience where we had a faith in something bigger than ourselves and then had the event, we are often left with that kind of question. And you know, for me, I asked that question too. And what that question looked like for me, or sounded like for me, is, really, God? I have suited up and showed up to the best of my ability. I have done everything that I think that you've asked me to do. I have tried to show up and be who and what you wanted me to be. And this is what I get at the end? Really? This is it? And when I'm asking that question, sometimes I'm asking it out of a sense of defiance, like, really, God? Really? Sometimes I'm asking it because I'm searching and I'm saying, God, what is it that you want from me? What do you want me to do? And you know, sometimes I'm asking the question because I'm trying to make sense out of what's going on in my life or in the situation. And sometimes I'm asking the question because I really want to assign blame to somebody. I really want somebody to be responsible for what's going on. So the title of today's show is A Pancreatic Cancer Survivor Asks, Where is God in all of this? And the topic of today's show really has more to do with finding a way to say, who is God for me? What is God for me? Giving you permission to ask, how did I get this kind of relationship with God? And if it's not serving me, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do with it? To challenge the ideas and the thoughts and the beliefs that you may have been given about God and how God plays a role in your life. And, you know, this isn't about religion. It's certainly not about religion bashing. It's not about any of that. It's about finding a way for me to figure out, how can I survive the unthinkable? How can I survive all of the things that I talked about at the beginning of the show? How do I survive pancreatic cancer? How do I survive ovarian cancer? How do I survive the death of my child? And all of that is what this show is about. So when I was creating the format for the show, the topics that I really unpacked in the process was, how did I perceive God? That was my first question. How did I perceive God? And then, could I lean in to that God's arms when I really needed God? And then the next thing that I wanted to unpack was, where did I get the ideas that I hold in my heart about God? And then the last question was, what kind of relationship do I want to have with God? What do I want that to look like for me? And, I created this show by looking back in my notes, by looking back in my history. And when I think about that first question, how I perceived God, and, when I went back in my notes and in my journals, there was this way, and when I just check in with my heart, there's this way that I have this idea of God still, like I did when I was a little kid, that he's sitting up in heaven, he's above the clouds, and he's got this white beard, and he's up there, and he's looking at everybody, and he's watching what's going on, and he's prepared to throw lightning bolts at people when they mess up, and he's prepared to, reward the people who are really good. And that was one of my perspectives of God. I also had the perspective as an adult that God is sitting there and in judgment of me. He's sitting there and testing me. Are you doing this right? Are you doing that right? Ooh, here's a test for you. How are you going to do with that one? So that was one of my perspectives of God. And then there was this other perspective that I held of God that had to do with punishing me when I made mistakes, or when I made poor choices, or when I out and out said, I know that this isn't the right thing to do, but I'm doing it anyways. So I had all of those perspectives of God going on inside of me at the same time. And when I think about that, how did I perceive God? If you've followed me for any length of time, you know that I am a gang rape survivor, that I was raped when I was 12 years old by friends of mine, and there was alcohol involved, and because of that situation, because there was alcohol involved and they were friends of mine, I chose not to tell anybody about what happened. And that is an integral part of my story here. So I was drinking at the age of 12, which is a bad thing, and I knew it was a bad thing, and I know it's a bad thing today, and I did it anyways. So God punished me by having me raped. Well, you know what? I know that that's not the truth today. I have the benefit of looking in the rearview mirror for about 48 years, and I recognize that that was a bad set of circumstances that happened to me when I was 12 years old. But if I was walking around in my life feeling like God punished me by having me raped because I drank, there is no way that I could answer yes to the second question, which is, could I lean in to that God? Absolutely not. A God that's throwing lightning bolts at me, a God that's punishing me, I'm not leaning into that God. I'm not trusting that God. I'm not depending on that God. I'm not even wanting that God to know I exist. I am doing everything I can to fly under the radar. And let me just say, when I use the word God, I know that that can be a word that is offensive to some people. You can fill in whatever blank you want. God, Spirit of the universe, divine power, the almighty I am, the all that is. Pick the word that works for you and just fill in the blanks. I use God because it's kind of a universal word, and I can't define God anyways, so I just use that word. So anyways, could I lean into a God that caused me to be raped because I was drinking? Absolutely not. So as I was unpacking this, it's like, where did these ideas come from for me? And I started listing them. Part of it is certainly my childlike interpretation of what the church tried to teach me. They were trying to teach me morals, and they were trying to teach me to be ethical and to be honest and to be all of those virtuous things. And in my child's mind that maybe never quite grew up the way it needed to around spirituality, I internalized that as God's trying to punish me. It's how sinners are dealt with. It's the way that we keep me in line when I'm being naughty. And so that was part of the idea of where God came in. If being raped at age 12, if that was the punishment that was assigned to me for drinking, oh, okay, I created that one in my own mind. Nobody said that to me. Nobody even suggested that to me because nobody even knew that it happened. So that little concoction was all about me. And yeah, that little concoction was all about me. So where else did I get those ideas? You know, another idea that I formed in my mind, or that I very easily could have formed, and sometimes this is where like the law of attraction and health issues can get kind of messy, right? I got cancer because I kept this a secret, or I got cancer because I didn't tell anybody about this, or I got cancer because, and you know, none of that is the truth. That's not what the universal laws of spirit say in my world. That's not what happens. That's not what they say. So all of this is kind of a construct of input that I got, you know, from the outside world that I filtered through my childish or childlike perspective of what maybe the church and my parents and, you know, society was trying to teach me, as well as the ideas and thoughts that I formulated within my own mind. And I know today that I can't necessarily tell the difference between those two things. So, you know, what is the stuff that society constructed? What's the stuff that I'm building on my own? And how do I navigate that? So that is, that's kind of how I constructed this. That's where the ideas came from. And then I think that the next piece, right? What kind of relationship did I want to have with God? When I started looking at that, and I started looking at, okay, how am I going to unpack this? How am I going to live my life and walk through this cancer process spiritually, emotionally, physically, no matter what happens physically? How am I going to navigate and walk through this process? And what kind of relationship do I want to have with God as I'm doing that? Well, the first thing that I knew was I really wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel safe in my skin. I wanted to feel safe in my environment. I wanted to feel safe in all ways and in general. There's this part of me that wanted to be able to bring all thoughts and all feelings to God. And there was stuff that was going on inside my heart that I felt like I need to tell somebody this, but I don't even know who to tell. There's not a person on the planet that I can share this information with. So I wanted that. I also wanted God to be bigger than people for me, because people had failed me. People had made mistakes. People had disappointed me. You know, they lied. Things happened in my life. And I wanted God to be bigger than that. And, you know, I saw that by looking around, you know, my church of origin. I saw it looking around my family, my friends, school, society in general. I mean, people are fallible. They make mistakes. And I needed God to be bigger than that, especially if I was fighting for my life and I needed to be able to invest everything I had into healing. So I needed God to be bigger than the church. The other thing was that I really needed God to be someone I could trust, or something I could trust. And I didn't care if it was a someone or a something. I only knew I needed to be able to trust God in my heart. I knew that I needed to be able to trust God. So if I was going to survive this, if I was going to survive cancer, spiritually and emotionally, no matter what was going on in my life, I knew that I needed to have some kind of a revamping of my relationship with God, no matter what was going on for me physically. Something had to change. So this is when I was walking through the process, and I actually implemented this process. I took a clean piece of paper, and this is my invitation to you. I'm going to give this to you as homework. And I personally identify homework as the work that spiritually brings me home. So this is homework if you choose to do it and accept it. So the invitation is to grab a clean sheet of paper, and on that sheet of paper, you're going to create the perfect nurturer for you, what that would look like. It's going to be a list of all of the good things. For me, it was a list of all of the good things that happened in the world, the good things that people did, the beauty and the kindness and the compassion. And I walked around with that piece of paper for a week, and I just made a list of everything that I could think of that I wanted to be part of that experience for me. And out of that is what I was going to build my own concept of God. So I'm actually going to end today's episode. This is going to be a multi-part series, and I'm going to end today's episode there with the invitation for you to really spend the next week doing this homework. Get a clean piece of paper and really walk through your life. Pay attention to the good that's going on around you. Pay attention to the good that's happening in the world, and build your own concept of what a perfect God or a perfect higher power or a perfect nurturer would look like in your world. And then next week when I come back to do next week's show, I'll share with you what I came up with, and I'll invite you to share with me too what you came up with as far as your perfect nurturer in the process. So I'm going to end my show here for today, and I hope that you'll tune in next week for part 2 of A Pancreatic Cancer Survivor Asks, where is God in all of this? Because God really is in all of this, at least in my world, and that knowing is what saved my life. So thanks for being here. If you found something in today's episode that is helpful to you, I hope that you'll like it and share it. If you are a cancer survivor or know somebody who's a cancer survivor and would like to share your cancer survivor stories, you can email me at 1000cancersurvivorstories@allaboutspirit.com. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. And until we actually have a chance to talk, I hope that life treats you well. Bye.